Hey, welcome to Blue Dream Health Collective, where we talk about real health as well as chronic illness, self-care, mental health, and other interesting and educational topics. I'm the host, Misty Blue, a biomedical science major and a chronic illness warrior. Thank you for tuning in, and I hope you love this episode. Taplan is an amazing advocate for Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. She has a beautiful service dog named Peach and her own design shop called Sunshine City Design Company. We are going to discuss a lot of topics from fertility to disability and more. Taplan, say hello and introduce yourself, please.
Hello, my name is Taplan. I'm 28. I live in Central Florida. I have a couple chronic illnesses and I consider myself to be disabled and just taking life one day at a time.
Yes, I mean, that's kind of how you have to do this when you have a chronic illness, is really just one day at a time. So let's go ahead and discuss the horrendous process that you have had to endure while fighting for disability. I know it's been crazy, so let's go ahead and share that story.
Okay, so I'll rewind a little bit. I was diagnosed with EDS in 2006. I was a sophomore in high school and I was a competitive cheerleader at the time, and I kept getting injured over and over again. And finally that, forced me to go to Hopkins when I was referred by my ortho, and ultimately was diagnosed with EDS. And other than aches and pains, it didn't really impact my life. And then in 2015, I had a really bad fall. And that really kicked everything into motion. And that's when I really became disabled. So back in 2015 was the first time I applied for disability. I was pretty much immediately denied, which I understand happens with most people in general, but definitely those that don't have an attorney. And I'll get into that. But at that time, I didn't even know disability attorneys were a thing. So I immediately got denied. I didn't really understand the appeals process, so I didn't even attempt to appeal it. And then I went back into things, did more research on, the right ways to apply, what you need to include. And I applied again and I got denied again. And at that point, I tried to appeal it alone and got denied again. And so it wasn't until the third time when someone suggested, hey, do you have a disability attorney? And I was like, a what? And they're like, yeah, it's an attorney. You go to them, they help you fill out your paperwork. They handle all communication with the government for you. And if it comes to having a court case in front of a judge, they argue your case for you. And my first thought when someone said that was, well, I'm disabled. I don't have a job. I don't have money for that. And that's when I found out that you don't pay them unless you get disability. And then they take a percentage of your back pay. So I did some research and I contacted an attorney here. Immediately she took my case. She was kind of shocked that I hadn't been approved yet. She made me feel like there was a really strong chance that I'd get approved immediately and that this nightmare would be over, because by this point it was 2017. So it had been 2 years that I had been going through this process.
Wow.
So she filled out a whole new application for me. And I got denied. Shocker. And so she's like, don't freak out. They deny people that are this young a lot. We're going to appeal it. It's not going to go farther than that. The appeals council is going to approve it. I have zero doubts. And then they didn't.
Wow, that's crazy.
The next, point or jump we had to do from that was go to court and take it in front of a judge. And that court case was March 12th of this year, 2020, which now feels like 3 years ago because of how long this
happened.
And my lawyer again said, wow, I really feel like that went well. It was great. And then about 4 weeks later, I got a denial letter in the mail.
How? I don't understand how.
I don't get it. And my lawyer had said multiple times, like, I have never had a client that has had this many medical records to submit to someone get denied. Like, I had over 10,000 pages of medical records and they still denied me, which makes
right. And a lot of crazy stuff too. I mean, you were in the hospital for like this blood clot that could have been potentially fatal. I mean, there's a lot of a lot.
So then my current attorney, well, she's not my current attorney anymore. She was like, this is as far as we can take it, because your next step from here on out would be to do a federal appeal. And
Wow.
I was like, well, do you think I have a shot in that, or do you think I should just reapply? And she's like, they're trying to get you to reapply now. Because at this point, I've been in this for 5 years and they owe me so much back pay if I get approved that they're going to try to get out of it in any way that they can. So she's like, you need to appeal it. And she's like, I'm going to send you the information for a lawyer that handles federal appeals, who's out in Orlando, which is about an hour away from where we are. And I contacted her, and they looked over my case for about a week to see if they'd be able to help or not. And they called back and they're like, yeah, we're taking your case. You know, again, told me that it should go great and that, you know, I have no reason not to be approved. But at this point, I've been hearing that for 5 years. So I'll see it.
Wow.
A little bit better about it now. But
So what's the outlook? Like, when does this take place?
So because of COVID, she said it would take 18 to 24 months before we got an answer.
This is insane.
12 to 14, but yeah, 2 years. And this happened. She took my case 6 weeks ago. So.
Oh, wow. And what I don't understand is, you know, for people who are going through this process, like, how do you live in the meantime? Like I mean, you're disabled, so technically you can't work. And even if out of desperation, you try to keep the roof over your head to try to get a job for a couple weeks until, you know, you get fired or lose the job or can't keep up because of your health, and to try to get another job later just to try to like stay afloat, then that looks bad on you. And it makes it almost impossible for you to get approved at that point.
Well, I have to say that I feel really fortunate to be in the situation that I am and have the support that I do. My partner's a physical therapist, so they have a really good job. And my mom is really supportive and tries to help as much as she can. So I never really feel that losing our house, it would never come to that because we have support to help us. But I feel really fortunate to be in that scenario, because when I talked to my lawyer years ago, because I was so frustrated with how long it was taking, and I asked her, what can we do? Can we expedite this? She told me that she has so many clients that live in their cars because they couldn't pay their mortgage and they lost their house and they're homeless waiting. And I'm just really thankful to be in the situation that I'm in. So I try to keep in mind that I'm lucky and I take it day by day. And I mean, do what anyone else does when they struggle. I have no other option. I don't know it any other way. So we just try to get through it. And if you asked me this 5 years ago, if I could handle it being in it 5 years from then, I'd tell you you're crazy and that I'd give up on it. But like, I really don't know anything else. And I'm already in it this deep. And so I'm not going to give up. But
wow.
Yeah.
It's just crazy. I hope that one day this can be fixed and that not be so difficult for, you know, for people to be able to get help. And because it's not even necessarily always about the money too. It's about getting insured, you know, to be able to see the doctors, to keep up with your care, you know,
I mean,
in general.
We pay in insurance coverage alone, we pay $500 a month for my insurance. And that's not my $80 copays to see a doctor. That's not my $50 prescription costs. You know, like, we're paying well over $1,000 in medical fees. That's not even including the medical bills from hospital stays that I've had. So yeah, right. The insurance would be life-changing. It would really be life-changing.
Absolutely. I understand that. So you are incredibly talented. You have this beautiful shop, Sunshine City Design Company. So tell me more about how that came about and what we can look for coming up in the new year.
So if there's one thing to know about me, I'm impulsive when it comes to shopping. And one day I decided I wanted an iPad. And so I got one. And I had done some, you know, sticker designs when I was fundraising for my service dog. But I had my sister help me with those on like Adobe Illustrator. I had never really done it myself. I had just told her what I envisioned and drew it on paper, and, you know, she turned it into a sticker. And, you know, I'm like looking into iPads and I look at my wife, Megan, and I'm like, I really feel like I could draw some stickers on that. I think I should buy one. And she's like, okay, well, like sit on it for a week. And if you still feel this way after a week, do it. And I did. And I'm really glad that I did because I ended up drawing a lot as like an escape when my dad was sick. And that's kind of how this all spawned. I just drew things and people were like, wow, I would love that on a sticker. And so I did it. And now my Etsy shop is like pretty successful. I mean, I've only been open for a month and it has over 100 sales. I got very overwhelmed around Christmas time because I was expecting that influx of orders, but it's been really fun. And it's been really like, I don't feel like it's work because I can just draw when I feel well enough to draw. And then I just post them online and it takes over.
I love it. You make it look so easy too. I've noticed you have like some TikTok videos of the process of like drawing the stickers out. And it's like so magical. It just like it, I'm like, wow.
I will say
it looks so good.
I feel like I can't really draw well on paper, but the iPad makes it easy because you don't feel so frustrated when you have to erase things and you get it wrong. It's just an easy little tap of the finger. And so it makes it a lot more fun. But yeah, thanks. I've been trying really hard on TikTok too. You know, I got to keep up with Gen Z, make myself hip and cool.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yes, I have one coming in the mail soon. I got one for my husband because he had like a Star Wars series. And then the one I really love, which I would love to do an episode at some point on it, is the fuck diet culture. I love it.
Coming out next year with that design. I just got a whole sublimation set up for Christmas from my mom so we can do our own. I was struggling finding somewhere to print them locally that, you know, that I like their product. And I decided to do it myself.
I love it. I love that mentality. It's like, I'll just do it then. I love it. Okay, so let's talk about Peach. I love Peach. So how is Peach doing? And then for those who don't know yet, Peach is your service dog. So let's go ahead and hear about how Peach is doing. And then definitely share about how Peach came into your life as well.
Yeah, Peach is great. He's bored because he hasn't been in public since COVID because I don't really go anywhere.
Yeah.
But you know, he's living the regular house dog life and loving it. But on the short outings we've done, I can tell he really misses it. But yeah, he's my service dog. He alerts to my dysautonomia episodes and my seizures. And he just turned 2 November 23rd. And yeah, I've almost had him 2 years. I got him January 19th, 2019. So
wow.
Yeah.
So do you have any tips for anyone who's looking for a service dog or just in general that might be interested in that?
Research. Look up all your different options. When I first started talking with my doctors about service dogs, I didn't know that you could owner train or get a trainer privately. I just thought there were programs. And those programs are great. And I looked into them, but because there are so few, especially locally to us, they have really long wait lists. Like I'm talking 5+ year wait lists.
Wow.
And when you're at the point where you're ready to start looking into a service dog, you don't have 5+ years to wait. And it's really expensive. I mean, $30,000+. And I'm not saying that owner training isn't expensive because we spent about 20 grand with Peach. But it was just faster. It was a little cheaper. It was a different option. And I got to be a part of it and be a part of training him and be a part of his puppyhood, which was really great. And then my only other tip is find something you're really good at and that is a marketable thing and start selling it as a fundraiser. Don't even name a price for it. Just like I did earrings. I made earrings and I sold earrings and I let people pick what they paid. And it just, my story started spreading. People started sharing my post because it's not just like, hey, I'm asking donations. They're getting something out of it too. And I think that makes a huge difference. So find something like that. I know people have done those rubber bracelets that are kind of like Live Strong bracelets. I know people who have done stickers. I did some stickers. People who have done t-shirt campaigns on websites like Bonfire. People have done like online bake sales where they'll bake something and send baked goods to people. I'm trying to think of other things I looked into and did. I had a Poshmark account because I had a bunch of clothes that I never wore. And I mean, literally anything that I did, I just put towards Peach. But I think the main money makers were when someone was getting something back for their donation, because so many more people were willing to donate.
Yeah, I got a candle and earrings.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, so I definitely want to talk about crazy health scares. I feel like that's very common with Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. You know, we don't have like that one time where we were in the hospital. It's like that's like we're like, what do you call that? Like frequent flyers in the hospital. So, what is your scariest health scare that you've experienced out of the 12 million that you've had so far?
So I really have to say it was the blood clot.
I
And
knew it.
really
That was crazy.
because they still don't know why it happened. And it wasn't just the one. So I guess I'll rewind and tell the story so people know what we're talking about. But last summer, I started having this weird neck pain. And when I have a new pain, I'm like, we'll see what happens. Because like if I went to the doctor every time something new hurt,
Oh yeah.
I might as well just live there. So it never got any better. And then I went to Disney World because my friends came to visit from Georgia, and I had a backpack on my back while I was waiting in line to get food. And I looked down at my hand and my whole arm is purple. And I'm like, this is not normal. And my neck's still at this point, but I'm like, probably fine. So I went home, ignored it. My friends ended up going home. And then a week later, my neck pain got really bad. And so my mom was like, you need to go to an urgent care because like, what if you have strep or like a swollen lymph node? Like, even though it wasn't my throat, it was my neck, but it didn't feel muscular. It's so weird to describe because it was like no pain I had felt before. But when like you felt my neck, it kind of felt like when you touch a swollen gland, like a little tender. So I go to this urgent care. And this is a joke. Oh my God, I can't believe this happened still. They don't do anything. They're like, oh, you probably have a virus. Let me give you antibiotics. And I'm like,
oh, it's just stress.
Right? And I'm like, antibiotics for a virus? That doesn't make sense. Like, material, whatever. So I didn't take them because I knew that that was stupid. And I went home. And then the next day I woke up and my neck was huge. Like it was so swollen that you could not see any jaw definition. And so I called my mom and I'm like, Mom, something is going on. And she's like, I'm sending Dad over to your house. He's taking you to the emergency room. You need a scan. And I'm like, okay. So my dad shows up at my house to drive me to the ER. And we go to the hospital that's like 5 minutes from my house. And it's a good hospital, but it's not like the trauma hospital in our county. So I go to the ER and in my head, I'm like, this guy's gonna think I'm like faking it, like that this is a swollen gland, that I'm like the most over the top ever. And so he orders a chest and neck CT. They do it and he comes back in, and I will never forget the look on this guy's face because he looked like he had seen a ghost. He walks in and he's like, you have the biggest blood clot I've ever seen in my career in your jugular. I just got off the phone with a vascular surgeon and then he like inserted the name of our trauma hospital. We're going to call an ambulance to transfer you there. And I'm like, I mean, can I drive? Like my dad's here. And he's like, no, because if it moves, like you could have a heart attack, you could have a stroke, you could get a pulmonary embolism. Like we don't know what's going on. You need to go see the vascular surgeon. And I'm like,
wow.
Well, that's probably fine. So I call Megan and I'm like, well, I'm going to the other hospital. They'll take me in an ambulance. Guess I'll see you there after work.
Take your time. Bring me a Lunchable.
Right. So
gosh,
I got transferred to the other hospital. I ended up seeing the vascular surgeon. They originally thought it was because of my central line. But later found out that I had 5 more DVTs in my right arm, and the placing of all of my clots didn't anatomically make sense for where my central line was located. Like, and the clot wouldn't have moved like that. If the clot had moved, like I would have died, not gotten a clot somewhere else. So they were like, we need to pull your line just in case. So they pulled it. They started me on heavy dose blood thinners immediately before I was even transferred to the hospital. I was in the hospital for about a week and a half on IV heparin until they felt good enough about sending me home on oral anticoagulants, and I was on Eliquis at that point. And then, I'm trying to think what happened after that. I stayed on Eliquis for about a year. I'm now on a different blood thinner because of trying to have a baby. But yeah, it was very scary. I ended up getting another central line placed, which ended up having to be pulled 3 to 4 months later because it kept clotting off, even though I was on high doses of blood thinners.
Wow.
To this day, no one knows why I clot the way that I do. My hematologist is convinced that it has something to do with EDS, potentially a type that they haven't figured out yet. Because yeah, I can't have a central line anymore because it'll clot off even though I'm on blood thinners.
Yeah, that's interesting. So I am curious if that could be like some other type. I mean, that could very much be likely.
Mm-hmm.
That's just crazy.
It was wild. It was wild.
Yeah. So speaking of getting pregnant and babies and all that good stuff, you and Megan are trying to get pregnant. And I understand it's been very complicated, especially since coronavirus. Would you share more of that story with everybody?
So I've always wanted a baby. Ever since I was a baby, I wanted a baby. My mom tells me I used to carry bags of rice around a grocery store and pretend I was a baby. My baby dolls came with me everywhere. So there was like never a time in my life where I didn't see myself being a mom. And I won't say Megan was the same way, as in like she wanted to carry a baby and be a mom like that, but she always saw herself having kids. So we talked about it for about a year, but we weren't ready at that point. We weren't ready financially. We weren't ready. We just wanted to complete things, certain things. Like I wanted to have a new car before I got pregnant. She wanted to pay off her car before we got pregnant. Just like things like that to make us feel like we were more squared away and ready for this major responsibility. So then this past January 2020, we decided that we were ready to start trying, that we were going to start trying in March. We all this one. And then COVID happened. And back when we started discussing trying in January, at that point, we had planned on doing a home InStem with frozen donor sperm that we purchased from a bank. And so they suggest that you start tracking your ovulation with like ovulation predictor strips that are essentially like a pregnancy test. You pee in a cup, you dip it, and you wait till it shows you you're about to ovulate. And then 36 hours later, you ovulate and you inseminate based off that strip. And when we started taking those, we learned that I don't ovulate.
Oh no.
Make getting pregnant a little tricky. So at that point, we decided we were going to see a fertility clinic. The doctors that work at fertility clinics are called reproductive endocrinologists. They specialize in hormones, specifically getting pregnant, helping people maintain pregnancy if they've had recurrent pregnancy losses. So anyway, COVID happened in March, and me and Megan decided that we wanted to put it on hold for a little bit just because we didn't know what the state of the world was going to look like. And then in the summer, we kind of realized this is not going anywhere, and we can't put our lives on a hold. And I don't want to say that in a, I can't put my lives on hold. I'm hanging out with everyone and not wearing a mask.
I just need normalcy.
Right. No, what I mean by that is like, I already have fertility issues, and the older you get, the more you have. If we wait, we might not ever be able to have a kid. So we decided to call the clinic and make an appointment. And we started trying. Immediately, our doctor recommended a medicated IUI. And an IUI is intrauterine insemination. They bypass the vaginal canal entirely. They open up your cervix with a speculum, and they stick a catheter through and put the sperm right there. And it allegedly increases the chances of getting pregnant because the sperm and the egg meet a lot faster. And And then medicated, meaning I was on medicine to stimulate my ovaries and produce mature follicles, which contain eggs. And then another medication that forces me to ovulate. And so we did 5 IUIs total, and they have all failed.
Wow.
The first one, we did get a positive pregnancy test, but it was a chemical pregnancy, which is just a very early miscarriage. And something that I didn't know until we went into this was 70% of people who get pregnant end up having chemical pregnancies. And they don't know, because unless you're seeing an RE and unless you're tracking so closely, you don't realize that you're pregnant, and you just think your miscarriage is a late period. But yeah, it's pretty interesting. But
Wow.
the rest have failed, and here we are today. Trying to decide what our next step is, most likely IVF, but that's a really daunting thing because we don't have the finances for that, because it's unreal.
Expensive. Yeah. Oh, I'm so sorry to hear that. So do you have any underlying illnesses, or did they figure out what could be causing your issues with fertility and ovulation?
So I have PCOS.
Okay.
My periods have never been regular. I remember before I got diagnosed in high school, I went like 6 months without having a period. And I was like, this is great. I thought it was awesome. Like, all my friends were like bleeding and like talking about how much they hated being on their cycle. And I'm like, living the dream, not bleeding ever.
Oh, wow.
So I have PCOS. That was diagnosed back in 2013, I think. When I finally saw an OB/GYN down here and brought up my concerns and was actually forthcoming about my issues. Yeah, I got diagnosed with that. And other than that, no. And on paper, everything looks great. When I take those meds, I ovulate because they force me to. So theoretically, I should be getting pregnant, but I am not.
Wow. So the next step would be possibly IVF. Do you anticipate trying to start that in the next few months or this coming year? Are you still just trying to figure out?
I hope we can do it next year.
Yeah.
Timing is important to me. I have about 1.5 years left of my undergrad, and then I plan to immediately apply for a PhD program. So I want to.
Yay! Congratulations, by the way.
Thanks.
Yay! Why did you tell everyone, real quick sidebar, tell everyone what you just graduated with and what you're doing now, what program you're in, and your plans with
so I'm actually at UCF now, finishing my degree there. I was doing my bachelor's of biomedical science at Eastern Florida, but when I realized that did not mesh with my life and my schedule and being ill, the only thing I really wanted to do with that was a career in medicine. I didn't want to do anything else in healthcare other than be a practitioner. So I decided to switch gears and still be a practitioner, just differently now. So anyway, I left Eastern Florida. I'm now at UCF in their program for Bachelor's of Science in Clinical Psychology.
Yes.
I have about 1.5 years left, and then I plan to apply to their doctoral program for neuropsych. Hopefully I get
I love it. Oh, you will.
But
you
yeah,
will for sure.
I'm really excited about it. I'm really excited. And I think it'd be really cool to specialize and help people that deal with infertility, because man, I have tried to find a therapist or anyone that knows what I'm going through and can just like help me deal. And there isn't. So I think it'd be really awesome to focus on infertility and pregnancy loss and postpartum anxiety and depression and psychosis. I think that'd be
I love that.
Yeah,
absolutely. What would you recommend for anyone who's going through this? I mean, I know a lot of people personally who are struggling with fertility. Do you have any tips or advice, anything that has kind of helped you, whether it's coping or whatever?
Find your people. I'm in a Facebook group now. I used to listen to a podcast, My Favorite Murder. I don't anymore. But this group that I'm in is a subgroup of My Favorite Murder for people who are also infertile.
That's cool.
It's very niche, but I mean, like, they're great. And being in a group of people who get it and you can just like bitch to.
Yeah.
And you can say things that make you feel like you're shitty and selfish. Like, oh, my friend announced their pregnancy and my first thing I did was sob. And that makes that, when that happens to me, that makes me feel shitty. That makes me feel like a bad person. But they get it. And that's just
Real
how your
life.
feelings work out. Yeah. Feelings are valid because you're feeling them. So find your people, man. Having people who
Yeah.
get it is priceless.
I love that. And there's so many different things too, and that people have that work for them or don't work for them. So it's just nice to kind of see different perspectives and on all of that. So any other things to add to the fertility?
Not that I can think of. Someone told me, I will say this, someone told me maybe you're infertile because God doesn't think you should have a baby because you're disabled. There's been a lot of intersecting ableism infertility journey.
How do people think that that's okay? I don't understand.
I wish I knew. I've also been told, how are you sure you can parent if you use a wheelchair? And I'm like, are you confused?
Wow.
Are you living in the same planet that I'm living on? Because I know a ton of people who are disabled and awesome parents. And I know a ton of people who aren't disabled and are not awesome parents.
Absolutely. I mean, and that just goes towards like with the stigma of it's like disabled people, like it's like, are we just worthless then? We're not allowed to be driven and go to school and have children, and you know what I mean? I just can't understand that.
Yeah.
So speaking of stigmas, are there any stigmas that you want to discuss before we wrap up? I love bringing any kind of stigmas to the table to talk about that, because there's a lot of there's a lot of things.
Oh man, disabled people can be really good parents. People in wheelchairs can walk.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay. Pause on that. Let's go ahead and talk about that. That's a good one, because I've heard it multiple times from people that I care about too, that don't necessarily, and they have a good heart, and it's not, if it were anyone else, I probably would have been like really pissed. But instead it was like, okay, no, this is like a learning moment, teaching moment. But that's something I've heard from a lot of people, like, oh, why is this person in a wheelchair? Look at, they're standing up. They don't need a wheelchair, or sometimes they're in it, sometimes they're not. And even myself before, like when, my health fluctuates a lot. And there's been times where I've used a cane just because I'm like, if I'm having hip issues, or if my blood pressure is just so damn low that like at any moment, like I could pass out and I have that little extra support. And of course, the first thing people would ask me is like, what'd you do? You hurt your leg, your knee, like I sprained my ankle or something. And it's like, no, I just, I'm wobbly.
It is today. Yeah, it's a lot. I had heard other people say it, but experiencing it happens every single time I'm out in public. And granted, I haven't really been out in public since March, so
that's nice.
I'm gonna be real disappointed when we have to go back to normal. No, just kidding. But anytime we'd go to Disney World and I would have to get out of my wheelchair to get on a ride or to do something, it's like someone would always say something or give me a look. I mean, it's happened a bunch of places. I remember one of the first times it happened, it was before I had the wheelchair that I have now that, my insurance got, and it was my custom wheelchair fit to me. That was a lot easier for me to use independently. I had just one that we had gotten off Amazon because I needed something when we were out and about. And Megan and I had recently started dating. It was almost Christmas, and Megan, her aunt, her mom, and I all went to the outlets. And I was being pushed around in one of the like chairs you can rent at a mall, and we went to return it. And the like rental desk was right by the food court in the outlet mall. And I returned the chair and I'm walking out, hobbling, I should say, like I'm not even walking well. And one of the guys that's giving out chicken samples in the food court is like, you're not really disabled. You don't need that wheelchair. You can walk. And I was so shocked because that was the first time I had dealt with anything. And my mother-in-law for him a new one. And like before I could even say anything, she was like, what is wrong with you? Disabilities are fluid. Just because she can walk doesn't mean she doesn't need the chair. She has a bad back. And I'm like, I'm gonna keep this family around with this one.
Oh, I love that. So what are the main reasons for you using a wheelchair, just for those who are listening, if they're curious?
So both for pain, when I'm going long distances, but also because POTS, I can't go long distances or stand for a really long time. And especially being in Florida, it's really hot and I'm very temperature sensitive. So the wheelchair helps a lot with that. It's still not ideal. I'll still pass out. I'll still have a seizure. Shit will still hit the fan, but a little less with my wheelchair.
Yes. And it improves your quality of life because you're not so exhausted, you know.
I mean, we were annual pass holders at Disney World. Like that wouldn't have been a thing without my wheelchair. Like I can do fun things and keep up with my friends who are able-bodied a lot better with my chair.
I saw recently something that kind of went viral. There was like this scooter that was just thrown in the sidewalk and you were in your wheelchair trying to go on the sidewalk, but your path was obstructed by this scooter. Tell me more. Let's share this.
It was God, that feels like 3 years ago, and it was February of this year. This year has been long.
I know.
We were at my sister-in-law's wedding in February. She got married in a park in Orlando. And these little scooters are everywhere in a lot of like metropolitan areas. And so I'm trying to find the only way I can get into this park, because it's almost like a sunken park. So a lot of it is stairs, but there was one entrance like around the corner on the other road that had like leaves, just ground going in, that I could like off-road it a little in my chair and, participate. So we're rounding the corner and like right in front of the curb cut, spewed in the middle of the sidewalk is this scooter. And my first thought is like, okay, I'll move it. I don't know if you've ever seen these in person. They're heavy and they lock up so that you can't move them, which I guess is great if someone's trying to steal it, but it's not great if it's in someone's way and they're trying to move it. And thankfully I had Megan there. But I made Megan take a picture beforehand because I'm like, this is bullshit. Like, this is bullshit. And no one thinks of this because I see people blocking sidewalks all the time, whether it be with places where you lock your bike up, whatever. So she took a picture, I posted it. It went viral. I was not expecting that at all. No one ever listens to what I say. And then I got contacted by a news, West News in Orlando, and they wanted to do a story. And I was like, okay. And I was like, when do you want to do it? And they're like, we'll come to your house tonight. I'm like,
oh. Wow.
So they came to my house that night. And yeah, it was cool because a lot of people that commented on the post were like, hey, I had never thought of this before. Thank you for sharing. But then a lot of people also comment negative things. And because
trolls.
Yeah, right. And the company never really got back to us except for saying that they have no responsibility where people leave their scooters, which I think is BS because you can have a GPS and if one person leaves a scooter somewhere 3 times, boot them off your app. Like it's that easy. But capitalism and they want the money, so they'll never do that. But I digress.
Wow.
People listened and it changed some people's behavior. And when you're advocating for this kind of stuff, that's all you can hope for. You're never going to convince everyone, but as long as a few people listen and take that info and spread it to other people, then you did something good,
Absolutely. I love that. Okay. Any other stigmas besides that?
Not that I can think of.
Okay. All right. Is there anything else you want to talk about before we wrap up?
No, thanks for having me. It was so
Thank
fun.
you. I always love doing this because it's always great for people to get another perspective of, whether it's chronic illness or the different tiers of illnesses that go under our umbrella, Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, fertility, all of that good stuff, and stigma. So I think we covered a lot of good stuff. And then I'm going to share in the blog post some links of how to find you. So if anyone wants to follow you on TikTok, Instagram, all that good stuff. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Please be sure that you subscribe to the blog, which is bluedreamhealth.com, where you can find additional links and information on this episode. You can also check out the digital magazine on our website, as well as find us on Patreon, where you can be a supporter.